Welcome. My name is Mohammed Zaman and I'm Associate Professor of Biomedical Engineering. And today we're going to talk about cancer and its burden in the developing countries and how one can think about the point-of-care devices that hopefully will make an impact. When we think about point-of-care devices, we often think of malaria or other infectious diseases such as HIV and TB, often not about cancer. And when we think about cancer, we often don't think about developing countries. So we'll look at the sort of the interface of both of these things, hopefully, and try to get a sense of what are the challenges, how do we think about it. So let me start off first with a common misconception that somehow cancer is a problem of the developed world. So when we think about cancer, we think about sort of North America, Canada, Western Europe. But this sort of plot shows you that actually the incidence rate is higher in the developed world, but mortality is not. And there are two reasons for that. The first reason is that the fact that we have better technologies and better devices, early diagnosis, better awareness allows us to detect cancer early, as opposed to in the developing countries where the challenges for early diagnosis are tremendous. Okay, but once we do diagnose, actually the outcome is pretty grim. So for example, let's take a look here at Central and Eastern Europe. Let's take a look here at Africa, West Africa. These rates are pretty high, and this is going to increase substantially as we move along in our time. And so how do we think about these new and emerging challenges associated with cancer? So that's the first thing. We need to think about it in a global sense. And from the context of point-of-care devices, it's also actually very interesting because many of these are also growing markets. So if you are thinking about from the business side of things and where the uptake of the point-of-care technologies will be, these are some of the areas where a lot is going to happen. So, sorry. This was an economist a couple of months ago in March, and one of the things that they mentioned was that the impact or the potential impact of cancer in the developing countries, certainly in the case of women's health, in some cases is going to be even more than HIV. And when we think of developing countries, countries that are on the lower strata of the economic ladder, we think of HIV as sort of really creating a tremendous impact, a tremendous negative impact. But what the recent data suggests that impact could be much worse in cancer, and we certainly are not very prepared. So what you guys are doing in the context of point-of-care devices in cancer may have a profound impact. So here is some data. It's a little old, but if you look at sort of the shape of the curve here in the developed countries, and look at the shape, for example, in the developing countries, we notice that the slope is actually quite different. And that is certainly a concern. So as we move forward, we'll see that the number of cancer deaths in developing countries is going to increase substantially. And we know that the impact of health goes well beyond health alone. It has implications for national security. It has implications for sort of just public security, national policy. And so the work that you guys are going to be doing, hopefully in your careers in point-of-care diagnostics, can have a tremendous impact in improving the quality of life of a lot of people. Now, here again is one more data slide where we can see the slope associated with cancer to be substantially higher than many other diseases. So if you look at the other infectious diseases slope, they're actually going down. HIV is tend to come up a little bit again, but hopefully that will start to decrease again because of better testing. You look at maternal and nutritional disorders, you look at road traffic injuries. Some of them have a positive slope, but overall, the chronic diseases, cancer and diabetes, are on the rise, but cancers have a substantially steep slope moving forward. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is how do we think about diagnostics and point-of-care diagnostics in the context of developing countries. The WHO, the World Health Organization, has come up with what they call the sort of assured criteria. Right? So this stands for accurate, sensitive, specific, user-friendly, rapid and robust, and equipment-free, and finally deliverable to end users. And if you think about point-of-care devices in the context of cancer, there are three main categories in which we need to think about. The first one is the device itself. Coming up with a device that is accurate, that is sensitive and specific. So if you're looking for cervical cancer, it is able to detect that with high sensitivity and with high specificity in a way that is user-friendly. Okay, so that is about the technology itself and how it's going to perform under those conditions. So that's, of course, goes without saying, and in some ways you have to engage with the developing world there, but in some ways it's a work in the laboratory, in the clean rooms, in the ideas and hypotheses. The second one is to be able to test these, that they are robust, and here we mean robust in two ways. The first one is that it is robust in terms of its performance. So it performs very well in one village in Kenya as it performs in another village in Tanzania. So it's robust in terms of its performance. The second one, which is equally important, is that it's also hardy. It's also able to withstand the effects of climate, the effects of temperature, the effects of humidity, wear and tear, all of those kinds of things. So here we mean both physical robustness and the robustness in terms of results. And finally, and certainly not something that can be underestimated, is that it is able to work within existing cultural, social, religious contexts. So it shouldn't affect people's lifestyle in a negative way. The uptake of any innovation, the stickiness of any innovation, depends largely on its ability to integrate within the existing system. If it starts to become something that people are unable to sort of use and they're uncomfortable, it's too cumbersome, it's really not deliverable to the end user in many different ways, then it's not going to work, no matter how cool, how exciting, how precise the technology is. And this is oftentimes the area where most technologies, point-of-care technologies, fail in the developing countries. So as we think about cancer, as we think about, for example, cancer in a social context, which may have certain taboos. So cancer that may be associated with infection, cancer that may be sort of prevalent in women in a society that is largely male-dominated, how is it going to work? And what are the issues that you're going to sort of address in that way? So that is absolutely critical as we think about cancer and point-of-care diagnostics in the developing countries. This is the point where I'll start my conversation with you on the day when we meet in person, but this is sort of something to think about as to what are the bottlenecks, what are the challenges that you imagine, and how does one think about it both from the scientific side and also from the socio-cultural side. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you.